If you're not already familiar with Penni Moussa, founder of the Recovery Buddha, you will be after today's episode. Penni is a clinical psychologist in Sydney, Australia, and she shares her story of trauma, of addiction, disordered eating, grief, and mental illness, as well as other topics that we uncover in this conversation. And Penni is one of the most optimistic, uplifting, positive enthusiasts that I've ever met. I'm so happy to know this woman. I know you're going to connect with her. So here we go with Penni Moussa.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available, because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people. People who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
My goodness, Penelope Moussa. I don't know who calls you Penelope anymore, but I just think that's fun that that's your full name, Penni Moussa. I am so happy to be sitting down with you. You are the founder of recoverybuddha.com, which is a website that you're going to share with us with tools and resources for people in recovery. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This is really exciting to be here and to share about everything that's happening.
Oh, I can't wait to hear more. So let's dig into it. What are we going to find when we land at recoverybuddha.com?
Well, the website will be launched hopefully over this weekend sometime, and we're looking at providing resources that are free for people in recovery. So we're looking at putting onto that site some beautiful meditations that people can dip into depending on where they're at and what they might be needing at that time. We're looking at pointing people to resources that they can read about recovery, about different aspects of recovery, and also to promote loving kindness and self-compassion, and to guide people as well towards our private Facebook women's group. It's a really supportive community, and that was the initial evolution, I guess, of Recovery Buddha, because I really felt that we as women needed a safe place where we could land and connect with other women going through the same thing or recovering from something.
I do agree with you that I think it's a different energy when it's these women only or people that identify as female only groups versus the combo. I don't mind the combo. I like being part of those groups too, but they are different. Women just have a different worldview. We have, there are just many differences that I think it's important to have these safe places for specifically women.
Absolutely. I started the group and it was co-ed. We had guys and girls on there and it was fantastic. And I'm still in touch with some of those beautiful men today. They are just lovely souls. But it was really interesting. As soon as I decided, I think I'll look at just making it women only, which I think was a bit of my goal to start with. It grew exponentially. I just couldn't believe it. It's like the page blew up, and we were having so many people just wanting to join and wanting to be a part of it. And it's a beautiful community. We've got some really firm guidelines with respect and with compassion, and it's quite a spiritually orientated group. It's not a Buddhist group per se, but we do practice Buddhist principles, meaning being very compassionate, non-judgmental, and just having those kinds of things. Because I had joined other groups and all I could see were people talking negative stuff and biting back at each other, and that's just not the energy I wanted. I wanted a high frequency group where people could come and feel held and loved and have a sense of, I guess, just feeling the love, just always coming back to love. That's, for me, that's what it's about. And I'm hoping with having set the intention is that for this group, that's how it's evolved.
Oh my goodness. Well, all I can say is from only knowing you virtually up until we met today, I think every single person who comes across your path feels immediately drawn into you because of the love that you send out in every post, in every compassionate response, in every comment. You exude love, kindness, and compassion. So I am so excited for your new website to be launching. And by the time this podcast airs, it will be launched. And of course, men and women can access those resources, can connect with you, and can go further and do those meditations and everything else that's going to be housed there. So it's a great resource, everybody watching. So recoverybuddha.com. But the private Facebook group is for women only. And is that also found at Recovery Buddha on Facebook?
Yes, there are two Facebook pages for Recovery Buddha. One is just a general group that can direct to the website and other things for anybody that might come across it. But the Facebook group is a closed group for women that can be accessed via the website or via the general Facebook page, Recovery Buddha. I know it's a bit confusing, sorry.
That's okay. I think we got it. That was
we're trying to cover all our bases there. So just to gather as many people as we can. This is not about likes. It has nothing to do with popularity. I couldn't give a rat's sorry to be so rude about it. What this is about is giving people access to things that they need, because that's at the heart of everything. I don't want to turn this into a money-making thing. Recovery Buddha website will be a not-for-profit website where I'm just putting in what I know to share, I guess, with people.
Well, it's amazing. And you know a lot. You are a clinical psychologist. You are also a woman, of course, in recovery. You are also a woman who has experience with grief, with disordered eating, and with mental illness. And you're also the mother of a child on the autism spectrum. So I just feel like you can understand and have so much more compassion for almost anybody that comes across your path because of all of the different things that you've been through in your life. So what I'd like to do now is go back into your story. You can start from whatever point you'd like to. If there's a point in your childhood where things started to shift or if things change, but feel free to take us right back to your childhood, where you were born and raised, and how alcohol was a part of your life, if it was, and then keep going through, bring us all the way to where you are today, and we'll do a nice big full circle, and I'll have a few questions for you at the end. How does that sound?
Sounds awesome. Thank you. Thanks,
thank
Sarah.
you.
Wow, it's always a big question because at my age, I have quite a few years under my belt and it's hard to know exactly where to start. But I guess in terms of the trauma stuff, I really believe that we can experience intergenerational or transgenerational trauma. And also I do have a belief that if there has been birth trauma, then that is something that can stay with us throughout our life. For me, I guess that was some of the case. My mother had lupus or developed lupus during her pregnancy with me. So she was very unwell after she had me. So I was actually cared for by a relative for the first 6 to 8 weeks or something like that of my life. So there wasn't that strong bonding opportunity to start with mum. However, we were exceptionally close as I was growing up and through my whole life, best friends and soulmates. So, but I think what that did in hindsight is, I think that it on a cellular level, I think when that came in, it was about not, I guess, feeling safe, not having a sense of safety through life, feeling like things were really scary. So I was actually quite an anxious child from memory. I think it's hard to sort of look back sometimes and look as an adult as to how you were as a child and how you were as a young person, because I think our perceptions can be quite skewed compared to perhaps how other people saw us. But I think that was probably something. And look, I wasn't aware of that situation having happened till much later. But when you get these little bits of information, I guess it kind of all fits in place and it tells a story. So for me, I guess that was the first part of my story. So I grew up, my dad was a tennis coach, mum a speech pathologist, and I'm an only child. Mum wanted to have other children, but she was pretty much told, well, she had to have a hysterectomy, but then because she was so unwell, couldn't have any more children because of that. And she tried to adopt a little boy, and she was pretty much told by the committee and the people there that she wouldn't live till that child's 21st birthday. So the adoption was denied. So that was a huge trauma for her and for my dad. So I guess there was that grief that was there as well.
Can I ask, how old were you at the time when this adoption process was starting to get underway and then denied?
Probably about 3.
Do you remember any of it?
No.
No.
No, I don't remember any of it. But I just remember feeling so much sadness for my mum when she told me it. I just thought that is just so super sad.
Yeah.
And, that must have been so hard. And also having your mortality thrown in your face like that.
Yeah.
And this is what they used to do back in the 70s. So, yeah, I reckon it would be quite different today. But anyway, so that was awful. But I guess for me, there was a history of bullying at school in the primary years, and that impacted on my sense of trusting people.
Can I ask, what were you bullied for?
Well, my mum was working at a school, so I went there, but at a young age. So I was pretty much bullied at this school for being too young to be in the class. So I was too young. I think I was about 4, and I was in the prep class, which is like your K. I don't know how it works over there, but it's like a kindergarten class. And it was pretty much childcare, I think, at the time for Mum.
Yeah.
And then Mum wasn't happy with that. So then I was put up to grade 1. And I was only about 4 and a half or something like that. And I was kind of in that interim of between that and going to a school I had been enrolled in. And I remember having a best friend. I remember that I had a plate of food in front of me at lunchtime. And I have this vivid memory of sitting there, not being able to finish it on time, and being the last person in the whole class to sit in the classroom to finish. And she came back in with a couple of the boys and was just teasing me unmercifully. It was horrendous. And so the next time I had this lunch order, and I can still remember what was on the plate: sultanas, grated carrot, and salad. Like, it's unreal. I threw it in the bin because I just thought, I'm going to be teased. Like, they're just going to bully me for not eating fast enough. And that was at about a 4.5-year-old. And then it was, teachers were smoking in the playground and things like that. I remember being accidentally burnt by a cigarette as I was running around. And then I also remember boys bailing me up on the toilet block and just saying, we're going to lock you in the bathroom. And that was my biggest fear, being locked in somewhere and not ever being found again. And so it was just really traumatizing. And I guess it really set the scene for a lot of anxiety. And I remember times when I was just so incredibly anxious, even when I went to this new school, and it was just a girls' school, but just going into the bathroom, making sure that doors wouldn't close behind me and lock, and just things like that. So there was a lot of fear there.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine a little girl, being traumatized in that way. Of course you're going to be scared going into bathrooms. Of course you're not going to be want to be in places where you might be locked in. That is terrifying.
Yeah, I think it really was at the time. So there was that part of it, but then there was also another part where I was a really free spirit, and I would go down to our local creek and catch tadpoles and wander and make mud pies and put gumboots on when it rained and slosh through the water. So there was that part of me as well. So I can see that there were different parts, but that terrified me. Going to school terrified me. So I was just, I guess, really aware at that age of people's perceptions of me. And
at 4.5.
Yeah, and what they thought about me. And I guess it built a fear of negative evaluation and social anxiety and things like that. And then when I was 7, we woke up, I think it was a Saturday morning, and Mum said, okay, we're going to go to Nana's for a couple of days just to stay. I said, okay, great, because I used to love staying and spending time with my nan. So we went there and we packed a few bags, and it just felt odd. There was something not right. It felt weird. And I remember sleeping, she had this massive big room. She had an old Victorian house. So we were sleeping in the top room, and Mum and I together in this massive bed. And then she sat me down on the bed about lunchtime and she said, just to let you know, we're not going back. Mum and Dad are splitting up, we're separating. And I was, just to get your head around that as a 7-year-old, especially in the 70s, because in the school I went to, no one's parents were divorced, no one's parents were separated.
No.
So I think it put me in shock. It just took me ages to really come to terms with it, but just really upset. And I guess that was the next thing that kind of shattered my world as I knew it, because I loved my dad so much. And we used to have so much fun together and do so many fun things. And so there was that. And I do remember being told by my nana that you have to look after Mum. You know, we've really got to look after Mum. So I kind of felt like I didn't matter, like my feelings didn't matter, or that they weren't being validated. And
they weren't. Like they weren't. No. I also want to know, did you ever have the opportunity to have a conversation with your father during this time of the breakup so that you could at least connect with him on this and have that conversation? Or was that it? Did you see him again?
I did, yeah. No, we'd have access visits and things like that on the weekends, but they were always really emotional for me because I didn't know when I was going to see Dad again. He was gutted by this decision. Look, I can see, knowing my parents, it would not have worked anyway, to be totally honest with you. But I guess it was a time when you didn't talk. Kids were like seen and not heard. So yep. I internalized all of it, I think, pretty much. That's what I'm getting at. I didn't have the opportunity to have any counselling, talk to anybody about that because it just wasn't around. And I couldn't talk to Mum because I felt her fragility with her ill health.
Oh, and you were in charge of making sure Mum was okay. So there was no opportunity for you to say that you weren't okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Any anger, any upset, I really had to just keep that in and internalize it because I didn't think I was able to show it. And if I did show it, then I was being disrespectful. So yeah, it was a bit of a tough one. And then my dad moved interstate when I was 9. So a couple of years after that, I found out Dad was moving interstate when the next door neighbour at where we used to live said, ha, 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 your dad's moving to Queensland. And I just said, you're wrong. And I ran home to him. And this was on one of my visits with Dad where this happened. And I hadn't been told. And I ran in and there's my dad. There's my grandparents. Oh, have I lost you? Sorry.
Nope.
Oh,
I think we're good.
Sorry, my screen's just done something weird. Sorry. And then there was another woman in there, and she was a friend that had come down from Queensland, and I think my grandparents and her parents had worked and kind of conspired for them to start going out and to partner in a marriage. So I guess my understanding of that was my grandparents were living in Queensland at the time. So Dad moved up to pretty much, I guess, be with them as well. But I felt that he moved up to be with her. So there was a sense of abandonment, rejection. And when you can't make sense of things as a kid, you blame yourself.
Of course you do. Of course you do. We are completely self-involved when we are children. We think everything is our fault. Wow.
So, yeah, I just thought, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't he love me enough to stay with me? And, yeah, that was really tough.
Man, if you took the ACE quiz, I mean, I swear I think you are checking every...
I have taken that, and there's a few of them there. I haven't finished yet. I can add more. Oh, God, this is why there's so much there. But anyway.
But I think what's important, and the reason why I like that you're sharing these poignant, traumatic moments is, again, we're using your life and your story and your experience so that when other people who are newly sober or looking to maybe get sober, and where they're feeling like, they're broken, that they are beyond repair, that their life was so horrific that they went through things that their friends didn't go through. They see a woman like you who's gone through some of these horrific, very scary, awful things, and they can say, oh my God, well, I mean, I guess if she can do it, maybe I can too. And that is the whole purpose of this. So you're now 9 years old, your parents have now divorced, and you're really just told to take care of mom. Dad's now moving interstate. And now what? Where have you tried drugs or alcohol? Is there any alcohol in your life yet? Okay. No.
Yeah. No, not yet. And so I would go up and visit Dad every holidays in the summertime. So for 4 weeks at a time. Financially, things were really tough for Mum and I. She continued to work and she paid school fees. There wasn't a lot of financial support from my dad. So we pretty much did it on our own. But I still had connections with Dad, but it wasn't, I'd be lucky to get a postcard every 3 to 4 months, and then I'd get to see Dad at the end of the year, which I'd always look forward to. We'd go out a lot. I guess my first foray into alcohol was with my dad up there, because they used to party a lot. They'd have lots of friends over. There'd be lots of dinners. There'd be lots of Dad had a lot of very wealthy friends, and so we would go to these big houses and have parties. And I was still a kid, but I used to love it. I used to love the adult conversation. I find it really amusing. But there were always sexual innuendos thrown in with everything. There was always alcohol around. Dad would drink a bit. And I don't know, I guess I saw and heard things that perhaps a child shouldn't be exposed to at that age. But then when I was about 12, we went out one night, and Dad and my stepmother had this friend or friends, and he was a doctor and he was older. And his wife was a larger lady, and I remember coming home one day. This man used to give me horse bites on my knees under the table all the time whenever we were out. Whenever we'd go somewhere, it always ended up that I used to sit next to him. I hated it. It felt uncomfortable. There was something weird going on, and he would always touch me under the table. Even it wasn't, I thought, oh, it's okay because it wasn't sexual. But he would always grab my knees and give me a horse bite. It was horrible.
So a horse bite, I don't know if we're familiar with that here. Is it like a pinch?
I'll show you. Yeah, it's like someone going like this under the table.
Oh.
It's like that. So it's like it kind of gives you a bit of a reaction. It makes your knee go up a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's really uncomfortable, but he would do that. And this one particular night, I was sitting in the back seat. Dad was driving them home. I'm sitting in between him and her. She's a larger lady, so I don't have a lot of room to sit. So I'm a bit squished over. Anyway, he's absolutely plied. They were all drinking, and they went to say goodbye. And I was taught to always be respectful. This was the thing. I had to always be a good girl, always do the right thing, right? So I kissed her goodbye, say, oh, good night, and good night to him. And as I've turned around, he's stuck his tongue, anyway, I'm sorry, it's revolting, in my mouth, and just like, it was just disgusting.
And his wife is sitting next to you on the other side.
Yeah, it was, and she saw it and she went whack and slapped him, but slapped me at the same time without meaning to. But the look on her face was absolute disgust. And it's like, oh my God, this has happened, and she's looking like this. And I'm thinking, what have I done wrong? And it was nothing to do with me. He was just a really dirty, lecherous old man.
And in that moment, I'm just curious, did it not feel like, thank God someone's noticing what he's doing, and now she's slapping him and making it stop? There was none of that. It was still, what's wrong with me?
yeah, I thought she was angry with me, that I had done something wrong,
Yeah.
because she looked at me, she looked at him, and I was just in shock, I guess. And then on the way home, I said to my dad and my stepmother what had happened, and they didn't believe me. They said, oh, no, that would never happen. You know, he'd never do that. He's a doctor or whatever else. And I'm just like...
Yeah, but he did do that. So he would never, it just happened.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were not feeling heard.
No. And look, I know people have so much worse stuff go on, but it was horrible. It was awful.
Oh, so I want to speak to that. So I had an experience, you might have followed a little bit. I had 2 basal cell carcinomas under my eye, and they left, like, it was quite the scar. It was, it wasn't supposed to be a big deal surgery. And then I ended up being allergic to the sutures, and it was a bit of a mess. And it was sort of like 3 months of trying to deal with this and compressing it and all this stuff. And, and people, wanted to sort of say, oh, come on, Sarah, it's not that big of a deal. Like, a lot more important things are happening. And it was like, but this is happening to me. And the only experience that I can share is the experience that I experience. I can't tell anybody else's story. So I always want to encourage people, I don't care what is going on and what you're retelling. If it was impactful and meaningful in your life, and it changed a trajectory, or it created a result in your life because of that trauma, of that incident, it doesn't matter how big or small. We all have our shit to deal with in life. And so this experience, this sexual assault that you experienced as a 14-year-old girl, 12-year-old girl, I mean, I don't care if it's not as big as other people's sexual assault stories. It was impactful to you. It was meaningful to you. It was difficult and challenging for you to go through, and it was trauma. It was traumatic for you. And so I want you to speak about it and never, ever feel like it's not big enough of a thing. I have felt some of those feelings in my own work, where sometimes I think I haven't struggled enough with sugar to be able to help people with their struggles with sugar. And it's like, shut the fuck up, Sarah. Stop trying to make your story not, to be so small, to make it so that other people's is so much bigger. And anyway, all that to say, keep going. We want to hear your story, and that would be traumatizing for any of us to go through. And I'm sorry you went through it. So keep going from that point.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. It's I think when we've played small for a lot of our life, when we go back and tell these stories, it's hard, but
I want you to know, Penny, that I see you.
Thank you.
I see you, and other people watching this will see you, and they'll also see themselves in your story. So I don't care how little or how big, it is your story, and we want to hear it. We want to hear other people's stories. Okay, so keep going from that moment. Your dad doesn't believe you. Your stepmom doesn't believe you. How do you keep going?
They don't. So we just kept on going out with them. And anyway, it was something that just, I told my mum on the phone, but I just it was, again, I guess, internalized.
Yeah.
We'd still go out and do things with them, but he was never held accountable for that.
And did that man ever assault you again? Did he do the horse bites anymore? Did he try to kiss you?
I said to Dad, there's no way I'm sitting next to him. Yeah. I said, I will never sit next to him again. Do not put me next to him. So I made the point of sitting across or away from him. Whereas before, I didn't feel like I had a choice. And I guess I felt a sense of having to always be the good girl, to be accepted and loved and not rejected by my dad, because I'd felt that before. And then every time I went up there, it was like when I had to leave, it felt like him leaving all over again, because I didn't know how long it would be until I saw him, or it would at least be 12 months until.
So it was like a fresh wound every single year.
Yeah, it was. It was. And I'm sorry, my dog's coming up, so she might interrupt us. And then what happened after that? Oh my goodness! In terms of that stuff, I guess I went through adolescence, enjoyed my schooling. I had a really great group of friends.
So the bullying has ended. You're now feeling comfortable in school.
Yeah.
Good.
There are a couple of girls that I remember always when they walked past at school would have to say something, because my last name was Birch. So it was Penny Birch. And they'd call me Penny Bitch whenever they saw me.
Of course.
God. I mean, girls are just revolting. And but by the end of it, I just thought, oh, you know what? That's. I can remember thinking that is your problem, not mine.
Well done. Oh, self-actualizing at 14, 15.
Girls. Yeah, that's it. So I just let that go and just thought, oh my God, because I was really stable with my friendship, and they were great girls, and I'm still in contact with them today. I don't get to see them very often, but I've got some close friends from school still, which is not bad for nearly 25, 30 years later.
It's amazing. What a testament to your ability to maintain relationships and to, you know, to keep nurturing them, because they do die if we don't keep nurturing them. Well done.
They're just, relationships are really important to me. But I guess the next thing was Mum got remarried when I was about 16, and so all of a sudden it was her and I, and then all of a sudden I had my stepdad and 4 brothers and sisters and their families. So it was massive. They didn't live with us. They were all out and married. But again, I think there was a sense for me of, it all sounds very, no, I'm not going to say that because I'll be very judgmental. I'm thinking it sounds really narcissistic, but I think as teenagers and as a young person, we are quite ego focused. So, so it was again a feeling of abandonment. Like it was Mum and I. We'd been together for 10 years on our own, super close, struggling financially but getting there. We had a great relationship, and then we've got a man coming into it all. He was beautiful, my stepdad, absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, the marriage lasted 5 years. But in that time, when I was about 16, I started to develop really strong weight and body shape concerns, and ended up, in my last year of school having anorexia. So got down to about 40 kilos. I don't know what that is in pounds or anything.
Ooh, less than 100 anyway.
Yeah, was really unwell, and I would exercise excessively. I would spend my time, I'd buy laxatives and just pill pop those, and restrict my food intake. And I guess it was my way of controlling my life and all of the chaos and all of the shitstorm that it just seemed to be. And there was just, I felt like I was just bobbing up and down with everything that was going on and going underwater.
Yeah.
The only thing that pulled me out of that was one day I went up the street, and my nana had given me $10 to spend for the week. And so I went up the road and went into the local supermarket. I bought a packet of laxatives with that, and I felt so guilty. But then I actually shoplifted another, and I got caught. So the police, it was the most demoralising experience. I was about, I was 16 at the time, 17. And so they came and they gave me a warning. I explained everything, that I was unwell, and, you know, they were great. You know, they got it completely. But I had to go home with this little piece of paper with this little warning and whatever on it. And I could never hide anything from my mum. So when I showed her, she was just like, oh my God, she went off her chops. She was pretty pissed off.
And was she pissed off because of the shoplifting, but did you talk to her about the laxatives and why, or did that just not happen?
Yeah, you know, I don't remember, to be honest, but I think they knew anyway. And I guess I was chucked in therapy for a few sessions. I hated it, so it didn't last that long. And it just kind of self-resolved to a certain extent, at least the weight side of it. The head side of it's a different story, because I reckon I probably made a career out of eating disorders for about 15 to 20 years, oscillating between anorexia and bulimia. Thankfully now that is not in my life. I do still get the, oh my God, I'm feeling so fat stuff going on, because I realised I'm just in menopause. And so your body changes completely. Plus, I gave up smoking a couple of years ago, so the weight gain's inevitable, but I'm dealing with it. I'm really intentionally saying, no, you know what, you're healthy, it's okay, it doesn't matter, and things like that. But it's something that stays with you. And I know even when I'm treating adolescents with this, it's damn hard stuff, and I actually would prefer not to be in that field. Well, I mean, we can have a degree of what we choose to take on, and there's only one or two that I will take on at the time with regards to eating disorder issues.
And why is that someone like you who has experience with disordered eating, I imagine you'd be the perfect therapist to understand those clients. Why is it that you resist working with them?
I guess part of it is a little triggering, but they're also incredibly difficult to treat. It's pervasive. It requires a lot of family support and a lot of medical support, depending on what we're looking at. And I guess where I'm working at the moment, look, there's a lot of crisis management and things like that as well. And I deal a lot with the higher end cases of suicidality and self-harm and lots of things like that. So I guess trauma and things like that are my area, but I don't know. I just think we tend to refer those girls out to specialist eating disorder clinics, because they really do require specialist care. And often in these clinics you have your peds, like pediatricians, or a medical doctor as well, and that's all they do. They just do eating disorders. Whereas when we're dealing with so many other different kinds of cases as well, for a therapist it can be really quite overwhelming and exhausting, and I guess we just also need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely. And also what I'm thinking is, with your experience now with addiction, maybe that's more the path that you are really passionate about.
Absolutely. I certainly am. It's just something there that that's where I want to go.
Yes.
That's where I want to go. And I love working with adolescents, young people. My house is always full of young people. I've got 3 kids. My eldest is 22 or 23. Isn't that terrible? My daughter's turning 20 this month, and then my youngest daughter who's on the autism spectrum is turning 17 on the 4th of September. So we've always got kids over here. It's fantastic.
It keeps you young. I can tell it keeps you young.
Thank you.
I love it.
So I remember about that time, that's when I started drinking. But I was drinking in a way where if I was really angry, I'd just sneak into the liquor cupboard, grab whatever was in there. It was usually a bottle of scotch or something, or bourbon, and just have a bit of a guzzle and put it back. And then we were also always, I guess, going out experimenting with alcohol as a group of friends. I remember taking a jar of Vegemite with scotch in it on the train with a girlfriend, going into the city for a bit of a night of fun out on the town with some friends. And I thought, oh my God, like those memories, they're fun memories to remember, because we thought it was normal. We didn't think there was anything wrong with it. And you know what, at the time there may not have been. It was just kind of a thing. And but it accelerated, I guess. After school, I worked for a couple of years. I worked in a bank for 12 months, and then in the fashion industry, which was importing fabrics and selling to fashion designers, which I loved, because that was going to be the other career, fashion design or something, versus psychology, but I chose psychology. That was great, but there were some big nights had there. I guess I landed my first boyfriend, or real boyfriend, and we would go out. Every weekend was partying. So it was weed and alcohol. And then that sort of subsided. And then I went through a few relationships, and I really think that I was looking for someone to come and save me. I was looking for that knight in shining armor. So I think I got addicted to being in a relationship. So there was one thing kind of after another. And
let's be honest, you were probably also looking for a male figure in your life. Your dad had left. There's that sense of abandonment. You're looking to fill that void.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. And so I would be devastated when the relationship finished and have this absolute breakdown over it. And yeah, I was addicted to love. I was addicted to relationships. And I guess it wasn't until I met my husband now when things began to settle. Although prior to that, I had gone through another patch. I'll say patch because things seem to have happened in patches. Where I was working in the hospitality industry, I was managing, and this was after I'd finished uni, in between my uni and masters in psych, and I was just going out every weekend and just getting totally loaded on speed, on ecstasy, alcohol. It was just a pills and powder time. So that I could see that I was falling into a bit of a dark place and into a dark hole with that. So I ended up being able to pull myself out of it. And it was only because I fessed up to my mum. I rang mum from work one day and was just a mess, just crying and just, so she came in and I said, Mum, you know, this is what I've been doing. And she said, I know. She said, I know. So what are we going to do now? Like, she was amazing. There was never any judgment from her. She was just there to just love me through it all. And she really did. So that was amazing. And because of my love for her, that all that other stuff stopped. And I met my husband.
Did you go to treatment at that time when you fessed up to your mum with all of the pills and powders and everything?
No, I didn't. I guess, stopped. Actually, I moved state. I did a geographical.
Yep.
I just changed everything in my life. I met David through a friend and decided to move from Melbourne to Sydney. I grew up in Melbourne, Victoria, and then moved up here to Sydney when I was about 26 or 27, something like that. Anyway, 1994, I moved here, and we were together for a couple of years before we got married. And
so are you drinking, are you just drinking alcohol at this point? And now you've come through your master's, you've now gotten your PhD by 27 when you met your husband, David?
No, I don't have my PhD. Okay. I would love to have my PhD. Life hasn't allowed that to happen yet.
That's okay.
I say yet.
That's right. So you went through, you got your master's, and then you had quit all the drugs, but you were still drinking alcohol.
Still drinking alcohol, and and I found that the eating disorder flared up a little bit. But I don't know. I guess I just grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up, and David and I were, I think, pretty immature when we got married. We were very much in love, and he was also my sense of stability. He gave me that sense of grounding that I felt I needed in my life. And he's got the most beautiful heart. He's just such a warm, loving man. He really is. And that's never changed. Although things weren't always great. I kind of look at it, funnily enough, it's our wedding anniversary today. We're 23 years married.
Oh my goodness. Happy anniversary. 23. That's huge.
I believe it. And I kind of look at our marriage as being, you know, the first 10 or so years, and then the second 10 or so years, because they're totally different. Yeah. The first 10 years were pretty hard. We had our 3 kids, and there's 2 and 3 years between them. And then I felt I didn't have anyone here in Sydney. any family to help out. I had my husband's mum and his sisters, which were absolutely fantastic. Mum ended up moving up here for a couple of years, but then went back to Melbourne because financially Sydney's just crazy. It was much harder for her to be able to live and survive up here. And that was really beautiful. But through that time, I ended up with postnatal depression, drinking. I wasn't drinking through the pregnancies. I remember with my third, I would have an occasional drink, a glass of wine or a couple of glasses of wine. And I look back on that and think, was I the cause of her developing and having autism? I went through a lot of mother guilt with that. I resolved that because I know I'm not the cause of that, but there was a lot of grief and a lot of guilt and shame there for a while. And our relationship there was a lot of emotional expression in our relationship. There was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of arguments that were had, I think, in our first 10 years of being married.
And were any of those arguments because is David a drinker or is he a non-drinker and you were drinking and he was frustrated? Like was the addiction part of the fighting?
It was a part of the fighting, but also I would get really angry when I was drinking. So we would have some pretty nasty arguments. They'd be quite volatile at times.
And it's like, of course you were angry, and you're a clinical psychologist. You know why. Like, I'm sitting here saying, of course you were angry when you were drinking. Look at what your childhood delivered to you. Like, you were just, this is all this unresolved trauma. I have worked through. Anger was my go-to emotion my whole life. And I would always think, why am I so angry? Like, why is it that I have this anger? And it was only through going to therapy that it was like, of course I was angry, right? Like all of these little T traumas, big T traumas, they add up when they are completely undigested, right? When they're just not integrated in any way, we're not being heard. I was a child of the 70s as well. Sarah, be good girl, go and do this. Sarah, be good girl and go do this. It was constantly how I was supposed to be a good girl. And you've said that a few times. And so it resonates with me, this be a good girl by doing this. Be a good girl by being this, and smile and just, all of that. So I'm totally sitting here on the edge of my seat listening to your story. And I know bits and pieces of your story, but of course you were angry. Like I just want people to understand who, might be new to figuring out what's going on in their own lives. And if you are feeling like you're angry all the time and you don't know why, or what's going on, look to your childhood. And it's not about pointing fingers and placing blame on our parents. They did the best they could. The point is, when we know better, we can do better. So when we see that there is trauma in our past that is completely undigested, non-integrated, not even talked about, not even acknowledged, that is still sitting there, that needs to be resolved before we can get over these feelings of anger that we tend to go to when we're in a fight, or when we're feeling that fight or flight, wanting to fight or flee. So totally understandable why you had those fights, but keep going. Tell us more about the first 10 years.
Yeah, anger was a big thing. And I was never allowed to feel angry as a child. So if I was drinking and I was drunk, I was angry. But then I'd be sleepy as well. So I'd oscillate between the two. But if I was triggered, that's it. It was on. I'd just fly into a rage. And and it didn't end well. And the kids were also privy to some of those arguments. And we've discussed it as they're young adults now and resolved those things. But that was really tough. And then in 2004, I think I was in my 30s. It was 2004, and Mum had been becoming increasingly unwell, and her lupus was flaring up. Then it would go into remission, then it would flare up. And she had a very nasty flare-up when she was living here in Sydney. And so I think that was part of her decision to move back to Melbourne, because her specialists were there as well. So with lupus, it's an autoimmune disease and the body attacks its own connective tissue. So mum's heart tissue was deteriorating and she needed to go in and have heart valve replacement surgery. 2 valves needed to be replaced. One doctor would not do it. Another doctor said he would. So she thought about this and wasn't really, she thought long and hard and she decided she would go in and have the surgery. Now, mum was also very spiritual. She was a psychic medium. She was so clairvoyant and a healer and used to do a lot of shamanic work. We were in ashrams together when I was 12, so I've had kind of that upbringing as well. That's the other side of it. So very spiritually eclectic upbringing, meditation, psychic circles, all sorts of kind of stuff. But anyway, it's really fascinating and fun. But that was kind of mum, and so I grew up a lot with that, which is I work very intuitively in my work as well as a psychologist. So that
what a gift.
The development of that side of things. But
I feel like that side of things is how you were able to tell those girls in school, that's your deal, not my deal. I feel like you were just evolved enough.
That's it. Oh gosh. But it was something I never spoke about as a teenager because it was just too weird to talk about. People wouldn't have understood.
No. Not back then, anyway.
Not back then, but now, yes.
So your mom has the 2 valves replaced, or she goes in for the surgery.
She goes in for the surgery, and that was in the late November. And then, so I was down there. At this time, my son was about 6. My daughter would have been about 3, and Bianca, my youngest, would have been about 18 months. So the kids were still quite little, and the surgery itself went okay. It did take mum a little while to get to the point where she was able to go to a general ward. But for that time I saw her, she was in ICU. So she gave me all of these homeopathic things to give her and to rub her feet with essential oils and all this kind of stuff, which I did all that and it was great. But she was really unwell, and then I didn't want to leave her, but I got a phone call from my husband, and I'm sort of told everyone's saying you should be up here with your kids and what's going on, and obviously he was struggling because he's got these 3 little kids. He's trying to work at the same time. His family are helping out, but I don't think they understood how unwell mum still really was. And on the day I left, it was horrendous. She had a lot of broken capillaries, which is part of the lupus condition. And they had started bleeding a lot around her mouth. So I had to watch her having them all cauterized. And then she became really distressed and had to be intubated again, so that she could just heal and rest. It was awful. It was just awful. And so I had to leave, go back home without saying goodbye to mum because she couldn't say goodbye. So I wrote a letter and I left a note. I was back here for not even a week, could have been maybe about 4 or 5 days. I was really involved in the kids' school, helping run P&F stuff, and fates were happening and all kinds of stuff. So I kind of threw myself into that to distract myself. But mum, she got a little bit better and she was able to go up to the general ward. She was in the general ward for 1 night, and then I got a phone call. I'd spoken to mum the night before, and she had said to me that she felt really strange, like something to do with maybe having a stroke. She was really worried about having a stroke. And what we didn't tell mum was that my nana, her mum, had had a stroke and was in hospital through this time. We didn't want to tell her, my auntie and I. So I just said, Mum, don't worry, it's okay. It's not going to happen for you. Please don't be too distressed. And but we didn't tell her about Nana. Anyway, I had a phone call the next day from my uncle, and he said, you've got to get down here quick. Mum has had a massive bleed in her stomach and she's back in ICU. So
Is it your mom or your Nana?
My mum.
Your mum.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm probably confusing you.
No, that's okay.
So Nan was in hospital as well, and then Mum was picking up on something that was going to happen, and so she had this massive internal bleed that was unpredictable, and probably because internally with the lupus, what she may have had on her outside was also on her inside, which we weren't really aware of. So I went back down immediately, and there were lots of conversations. She was intubated for this whole time. She had about 13 different lines out of her. And I had to make the decision of whether or not to resuscitate.
And you're the only child, so this is your decision.
Yeah. And I asked my auntie and uncle and said, you know, what do you think? And they just said, look, it's your decision, but Mum wouldn't want to live like this. And they were right. So I made that decision. Because what had started happening after that bleed, her organs were starting to shut down. And the one thing Mum said to me is, I never want to be on dialysis. And she ended up on dialysis. So I pretty much sat there night and day from about 7 in the morning till sometimes I didn't even go home. I slept in the waiting room just to be close to her. And I remember going in there one day and it was particularly bad, and in terms of the smells and other things. And I just had to race out, and I was sick. It was just horrible. And there was a beautiful pastoral care lady that would come around and she'd say, right, I'm taking you out, because I would just sit there. I'd just sit there night and day. And so I got to know the ICU staff really well. And it was coming up to Christmas. Christmas was horrible. It was at my uncle's, but it was lovely. But I cried through the whole of Christmas Day because I just wanted to be with my mum. And on the 19th of December, it was her birthday. So she was still in ICU, intubated, but I still had some balloons and a bit of a party, and we sang a happy birthday, and her friends came and we had a cake. My birthday was the 21st. That night I think I just slept there in the waiting room because I just wanted to be with her. And then my husband came down with the kids for Christmas and drove down, and I was exhausted because I was there night and day. So this particular night I fell asleep at about 5 o'clock. So I didn't get to go back and see Mum that day. And then at about 8:30 in the morning, we got a phone call from one of the nurses saying, quick, come in, she's really not well, she's not doing well. And madly got the kids together, got out, we were staying in a hotel, got out to the lift, and the phone rings. And we're at the lift, waiting for the lift to come. And then this beautiful nurse, she's actually crying on the phone, and she's saying, I'm so sorry, Mum's gone. And of course the lift door, I just collapsed, and the lift door opened and there's people there with a kid, and I'm like, oh Jesus, you know, I'm just, and that was the start of so much pain. And I never thought I could ever survive and ever live without her.
She was that one person that was always there with you and for you through it all. I can only imagine how difficult that was. Tell us, were you, I know David's been taking care of the 3 kids. Are you drinking through this experience with your mom? Are you not struggling with addiction at all at this point? Does that come later?
I always used alcohol to self-medicate, but it came more later after Mum had died.
Mm-hmm. Like as a response to the grief, do you feel?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I hadn't been drinking quite a lot beforehand, but through that time, I just guess it wasn't even in my mind. I just wanted to be with my mum, and so that was just what I was doing. On the day she died, I remember going into a bottle shop and buying a bottle of champagne, actually, because I wanted something to drink. So I did that, but I remember seeing 2 beautiful rainbows. So on the day she died, it was a double rainbow, which was just incredible. But that is what really started. That's when I really started drinking a lot to self-medicate.
And I also know there's a piece of your story that there is some self-harm that happened after the death of your mother. Do you want to share about that a little bit?
Yeah, I remember one night everyone had gone to bed and I had been drinking. I drink probably a couple of bottles of wine a night. And I was just so overcome with grief, and I sat on the kitchen floor, and I think I had a knife or something in my hand, and I just wanted to get rid of the pain. And I just felt that I wanted to be with my mum. I thought that's all I can do, and I just would cut. I just cut into myself.
With the intention of dying, or not?
At that point in time. No, not in that point in time. It was more to just ease the pain.
Yes. Yeah.
Similar to the drinking. So this went on for a little while. Not a lot of self-harm. That might have happened a couple of times. And then I went into rehab. I went to see my GP because I was really depressed, and he put me in touch with a therapist, and we worked on stuff, and she said, look, I think you need to go into rehab. So that was my first rehab, 2006, so 2 years after Mum passed, or a year and a half after Mum passed. And I didn't really want to go in. I felt like I was going in for someone else, and David and I were still arguing a lot. Our relationship was really dysfunctional at this point in time. And it was, I don't know, it was at the point where we could have separated because we were just so bad for each other, and we were just, everything was yelling and screaming and dysfunction, and it was horrible. But I can say now, thankfully, we have actually grown through all of that, which has been phenomenal. So I ended up getting 2.5 years up sober, but I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't sober emotionally. I still had all the resentment, all the anger. Hadn't really worked on things as deeply as I guess what I could have. I didn't want to be sober. I felt like I was missing out on things. I felt like my friends weren't asking me out because I was sober.
Yeah.
I was a party animal before, lots of fun, and now no one wants to be around me because I'm not drinking. I'm not as much fun. I think that every relationship I had was based on come over, come home, we'll have a wine, we'll have whatever. And everything that we went to had alcohol associated with it. I'd look forward to events where there was alcohol. Now I felt I had nothing to look forward to. Yeah. So I dug myself into a pretty deep hole. And so much so, and things were so bad in our relationship at that time, that without realising it, I was actually being groomed by somebody else. And it's not a story I tell very often out of respect for my husband, but we've talked about this and we're really open about it. This person, I guess, started paying a lot of attention to me, said all the right things. I was feeling unworthy, unlovable, unloved, all of these things in my marriage. And so I stepped into this other relationship for about 2 or 3 months. That ended very badly. David, he found out about it. And on that day he found out, I was working in a private practice, and I finished for the day, and we just, when I knew that he knew, I just had a suicide attempt. I just wanted to slash my wrists. I just wanted to die. I thought, this is awful. This is awful. Because my intention was never, ever to hurt him. My intention, I don't know if I even had an intention. I just wanted to feel loved, I think.
Yeah.
And without realising it, this man had groomed me, and without realising it, he was also married with children, And he also was seeing other people. Whereas I thought this was exclusive and I was anyway, this is just so out of my moral compass, something that I would never do. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of shame and
then I imagine a lot of grief when that relationship has dissolved and it's also not even what you thought it was. Like, at least if it was what you thought it was and it was found out, you know, we all understand what's going on. You thought this was an exclusive relationship where you were special and where you were, you know, feeling loved by this person. And
that's it. And it wasn't. And I was devastated and David knew it and he was very worried. And I had lost a lot of weight again. So I was actually put into hospital after that attempt. And in their hindsight and how fabulous they were, they decided to put me into the eating disorders unit for a refeeding program to eat more. And I wasn't overly underweight or anything like that, I don't think. But they didn't treat the trauma. They just said, eat here. And I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. I'm just in there saying, the fuck.
Yeah.
You know, what is this? And it was horrible. So I ended up, we ended up going to a couples therapist. We started through that process, who I lied to for at least a month or two, saying, no, you know, I'm not having an affair, all this sort of stuff. I denied it, deny, until I was actually able to be honest and say it as it was. And so we had, that was really the start of our healing as a couple.
And are you sober through all of this? So I know that you went to treatment before. You were sober through the affair?
Yes, I was. And I think in hindsight, I was dipping into the love addiction.
Yes. Yeah.
The relationship addiction and needing to be validated, needing to feel loved. That's what that was. And yet in my head, it was something completely different. But after that, because David was so worried about what I might do to myself, that he said, if you want to have a drink of something, have a drink of something. So I started drinking again and gradually reintroduced that. So I'd had 2.5 years or 2 3/4 years, whatever, up. Then that went on for a little while. And I went into another rehab, but it wasn't for alcohol, it was for depression and for anxiety. So I felt like I'd dealt with some of what had happened and the grief of this relationship and everything falling apart and my whole world falling apart. And then I was actually recommended to go to this other place as well because they were more trauma focused. So about 6 months after that initial hospitalisation, then I went to this other place and that saved our marriage. It was very trauma focused, and then they had a family week out of 3 or 4 weeks where David came in every day. He learnt what we learnt. He did the work that we did. So it was a real period of growth. So for whatever reason, as horrendous as it was, this had to happen for our relationship to change. And it needed a bomb under it because it was so dysfunctional and traumatizing for both him and I. And over the years since then, we've had our ups and downs. It hasn't been easy. Obviously, having a child on the autism spectrum and with other special needs brings its own challenges, but we've got through it and we've survived. And I think that's a real testament to him and to me and to us and as a family, that we've been really willing to work on this. And it's been fucking hard work. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's such hard work, but it's been really worth it. So after that family week and that intervention, I was still drinking, but I thought this time, you know what, I want to stop. So I put myself in a rehab after that the following year, and I had 4 years up. So that was really great. I didn't feel the angst that I felt the first time round, but I still wasn't there yet. I was still having that fear of missing out. I was still isolating. I didn't feel I had any sober friends. I wasn't connected. And it was that lack of connection that actually led me to moving into moderation, because I thought, you know what, I'm doing so well. My God, it's been 4 years. Surely I can go out and I can have a drink. I just wanted to have, I had fantasized having a glass of wine with dinner with my girlfriends.
I feel like you and I have so many similarities. I haven't wanted to point all of them out, but this is 4 years after I got sober is when I relapsed to same thing, where I just felt like I just want to be able to have a glass of wine with dinner with friends. Totally get it.
Yeah. And I'd met this person at work who we just clicked and got along really well. And she said, you don't have an alcohol problem, you're fine. But I didn't realize she was more of an addict than I ever was.
Yeah.
So I started drinking red wine and, you know, just enjoying it. But then I always wanted more. So for that 12-month period, I would just be white knuckling it, because I'd allow myself. And I discussed this with our therapist and with Dave, and they were, no, you shouldn't, but, you know, let's try it. And then I decided one morning, a year later, crying into my coffee on the porch, that it was making me feel miserable because I always wanted more, and that was it. And that was October 19, 2015. And honestly, I have not looked back.
Amazing. Congratulations on an amazing journey. Honestly, thank you for walking us all the way through and getting to that sobriety where you wanted it for you. It wasn't your family. It wasn't your husband. It wasn't anybody else. It was you for you, standing up for yourself. It's amazing.
And it's just been amazing. As soon as I decided that, I got online, I Googled everything I could find, found podcasts, found groups to be a part of, and what that looks like has changed a little bit over the years, obviously, as you dip in and out of things. But then came Recovery Buddha through that. And honestly, sometimes I feel like all my best friends live inside my computer. Yep. But when I go to She Recovers, like in LA, it was phenomenal. I got to meet my best friends that I had known for 3 years, who just were, it just makes your heart sing when you can be with a group of women or a group of people. And we had a friend, Colin, he came all the way out from Ireland. He didn't go to She Recovers, but, Scotland. He'll kill me for saying Ireland, Scotland. But we had a ball and we just all got together, and honestly, there was that side of it, and then there was the conference and meeting up with so many other people who I knew through Instagram or Facebook or groups, through home or She Recovers, or, honestly,
and that's the thing. I mean, we can criticize and condemn technology all we want, but it's not going anywhere. And look at all of the benefits of technology. I mean, it's really allowed us to be connected. I mean, certainly I am not anywhere. I'm in Canada, you're in Australia. There's no way that there would be any other way for us to be able to connect as often as we can, which, you know, by commenting and posting and sharing. Like, I feel like we are totally connected, and we'd never even met this way until today. And it's
beautiful.
It really is. And those ladies that She Recovers are creating these beautiful experiences that are just, you know, just life-changing, to be able to be in spaces, and all of us creating these spaces, you with Recovery Buddha and She Recovers and the Homies group and all of these different groups, where what happens is we're able to see each other for exactly who we are. We don't have to talk about the weather or what's on TV or any of that. We can go right in to what is real and what is important and what has completely transformed our lives, and the tools and the meditations and the books and the podcasts. And we're sharing all of these resources, and it's just such an incredible time to be sober. So anyone watching this conversation, anyone connecting with Penni's story, just know you are not alone. Anyone that's come through and is on the other side of addiction, we've all got these kinds of stories. They're not you know, it's not just one or two people that have stories like this. Like, we all have these kinds of stories. They're different, but they're similar, and being able to share them and get rid of the shame and the stigma of both, as Amy Dresner pointed out, getting rid of the stigma of addiction and the stigma of recovery. Because like you, the same for me, where I didn't even want to tell anybody I was sober because I was so embarrassed and ashamed of my addiction. So now I'm not telling anybody, you know, that I've quit drinking and that I'm proud of myself. And I'm not telling anybody that I'm in recovery and I'm looking forward to this great new life. I'm just stuck in this weird, you know, awful place that feels completely disempowering and certainly not a lot of fun and incredibly isolating. And it does not have to be that way.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. It absolutely spot on, Sarah. I feel such a sense of freedom. Like, this time around will be the final time around. I do not intend on going back, because my life is so much fuller than it has ever been. And the thing is, I never ever thought that it would be. I never thought I would ever get to how I'm feeling today, ever.
Tell us how you're feeling with the grief around your mother, and tell us how you're feeling when it comes to your anger.
Okay. Last night I sat down and I went through nearly every photo album I had, because I was looking for some specific photos for something. Now, all I could do was smile. My husband came downstairs and he was looking at me saying, "You okay?" And I'm laughing and smiling. I can look at all these amazing photos of my mom and all of the amazing things that we did, and her with the kids, and it's just a celebration. It's just amazing. She was incredible. That's my mama.
Oh, you really take after her.
Yeah, she's just, you'll probably see lots of photos up, but I've pulled some photos out, as I said, for a reason, but she just, I feel her.
She is with you. She is with you. I feel your mother, even just in this story. There is no, I mean, the fact that she was a psychic and a medium and a channeler and all of that, and an intuitive and a healer, she was already with you no matter what, but I feel that she is with you. And I was just interviewed on a grief podcast, and my father passed away almost 7 years ago. And her question to me was, do you believe that we never get over our grief? And my response was something along the lines of, I mean, you know, the pain is there. It's painful to not have our loved ones physically here, that we can wrap our arms around them. But my father is almost more accessible to me now in death than he was in his life. He struggled with addiction and with depression. And so in a lot of ways, I'm still able to really cultivate this relationship that has transcended life and death. And so I think that there can be some real healing that can come on the other side of grief. Not to say it can be sped up. Everyone has to go through it at their own pace, but we're always going to miss those people's physical presence in our lives. But death is inevitable, and it's part of our personal growth as the people left living, if we choose to take that invitation and grow ourselves up a little bit through that painful experience and the process of grieving. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely agree 100%. I absolutely do. And I think that's where our growth is.
Yeah.
And I know she's with me all the time.
All the time. So tell us, do you still get angry? Is that still one of your hot buttons? No, you're shaking your head.
No, not as much. Look, of course I still get angry. I'm human, particularly when I'm driving, and there's a lot of expletives that happen there. But in general, my practices of I guess meditation and mindfulness and just showing up for myself how I want to show up for myself every day has led to a lot less anger. Yes, there are times when I feel really frustrated, but I don't rage. There's not that rage that was there all those years ago. There's more acceptance, a lot more self-compassion for those feelings when they come up. And the ability to be able to stand back and observe it and say, I'm noticing I'm feeling angry right now. So responding to it versus reacting to it. That's where I'm at with that. So it's all, you know, of course there are going to be times when I go off at the kids for doing something that maybe they shouldn't have done or whatever. But that's just life, and I don't beat myself up for that.
No.
But the deep anger has, a lot of it's actually resolved.
Well done. That's because you've done your work. And that's the thing. We keep trying to escape doing the work with the relationships, with the men, with the food, with the controlling of the food, with the alcohol, with the drugs. We're just not wanting to do our own work. And it sometimes takes the affair, the crumbling life. For me, a DUI that required me to quit my job and move and change my whole life. These rock bottom moments create that foundation upon which we get to rebuild our lives. And I'm so proud of you. I'm blown away by you every day. You inspire me every day. And I can see the fashion design, the textiles in the fabrics that you wear and the colors that you choose and the beauty that you create, even just your Instagram photos with. I see that aesthetic and that penchant for design. And I just think that you're just the most colorful, special lady. I just think you're beautiful in every sense of that word. I'm so grateful to know you. I have a couple final questions I always like to ask my guests. You've mentioned meditation and some of these other things, but what are other tools that you have in your toolbox that really help you? I know community is a big one and service, but keep going.
Anything that's creative, for me, is really big. Whether it's painting, knitting, crochet, sewing. I just love doing things that are creative. Actually, on Recovery Buddha, we're going to have a colouring book that will be available that we've put together, or that I've put together. But anything like that might be sold, all the money goes towards supporting and sponsoring other women to go into recovery or to attend events to do with recovery. So that's not money that I get, it's money that goes towards that. But those, anything like that, and also nature. Nature is my grounding spot, and I love the mountains, I love the bush, the birds, just for me that's it.
And isn't it beautiful that so many things that you've talked about in your recovery toolbox, meditation, coloring, being in nature, these are things that don't cost money. These are things that you just need to make a choice to choose to do if you want to have the type of life that someone like you has in recovery, where it's feeling not like isolation, deprivation, we just don't get to have any fun anymore. It's creating a whole different life, but a really beautiful one. I'm always so inspired by you. Tell me, what is the best thing about being clean and sober?
The freedom that it brings, the freedom to be able to step into things that you're passionate about. And the freedom to create, new friendships based on authenticity and connections that are real, and then they're not based on small talk or connecting over a substance, or there is just so much. But more than anything, I just have so much gratitude in my heart, and I just really want people to know that they can recover and you can live such an amazing life. And so just change your relationship with things, even when you feel like you can't. That's when you need to connect with people who can say you can, because they can see the light for you even when you can't. And that's where our connections are so important. And it is through connection we heal.
I totally agree with you. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It is connection. I totally agree with that. Well said. My last question, I borrow it from Oprah. Penni Moussa. I love Oprah. Penni Moussa, what do you know for sure?
I know for sure that I can show up every day and love myself exactly as I am in that moment for that day. And I know for sure that love is something that is endearing and inside of everybody. And we can all return to that source of goodness and that source of love for ourselves.
Beautiful. I love you, Penni Moussa.
I love you, Sarah.
Thank you so much for being with me. This was an honor and a privilege. I can't wait to share your message. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for doing the work you're doing with Recovery Buddha. Good luck with the launch of the website. By the time this airs, it will be up and running, and I know it's going to be really serving so many people that are looking to be in recovery, that are looking to get sober, and then for all of us, people like me that are even 17 years in. I can't wait to get your coloring pages and meditations and really just keep connected with you, because you are a light and an inspiration and just a woman that I truly admire and love. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I love you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Get access to all of the free videos and interviews. Visit sobrietystartshere.com.